The Michigan State Spartans went from college football playoff contender to the past couple seasons just being a big disappointment within the Big Ten Conference. A lot of things have changed with the Spartan program. A lot of transfers left, a lot of transfers come in. Mel Tucker is gone, and enter now into the fray Jonathan Smith, former Oregon State head coach, led his alma mater to be one of the better teams in college football. Can he do that here with Michigan State in 2024? Well, you're going to have to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? Here in the booth with Tailgate Nate. Today, I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. What's that, you ask? Well, obviously, it's this. It's where I predict all 151 FBS level college football teams. That's what I'm doing this summer. And it means I'm predicting your favorite team. So why don't you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when your favorite team has a video on my channel. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video because it helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you would like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, please like, comment, share, and do anything else you can to help support the channel. Whatever you're willing and able to do does mean a lot to me. And with all of that out of the way, let's dive on into talking about the Michigan State Spartans. But first, I got to tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the team's defense, and at the end of the road, we will go through the Spartan football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. I do have a couple more things before we do start, because right over here are going to be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And of course, for your viewing pleasure, dear viewer, right down there below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. So I will waste no further time. Let us get in to talking about the Michigan State offense here in 2024. And while it loses pretty much everyone out of this cornerback room, quarterback room, you'll notice the theme with this team. There are a lot of players that leave through the portal, but there are some good players that come in through the portal as well. That is more evident in no position better than the quarterback room. Kaiten Hauser, Noah Kim, and Sam Leavitt have all found homes with new programs, and all of them had some playing time last season. Hauser was passed for 1,000 yards last year. Kim passed for 1,000 yards. Leavitt got the least amount of playing time, 139 yards last season, but no one really stood out in this quarterback room really throughout the entire season at all. Yes, they all had good moments in their own right, but none of them really stood out. So you get a quarterback that follows Jonathan Smith over from Oregon State in Aiden Childs. He is a highly 4-star rated transfer coming over from 24/7. I believe at one point was a 5-star rated transfer, but nonetheless, he comes over here to play quarterback for this team. And while he doesn't have the greatest amount of experience, only 1 year back at Oregon State last year, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns on 35 passes thrown, 68.6% completion percentage. He's a guy that has tremendously high upside and should be that starting quarterback for the Spartans in 2024. Tommy Schuster is also coming in. He is a former quarterback at North Dakota, and you have a freshman coming into this program as well. But it is Aiden Childs that should be that starting option for Jonathan Smith in 2024. Not only is he familiar with the Jonathan Smith system, he's been in a program run by Jonathan Smith before. I think he gives them the best opportunity to win as the most talented player in the quarterback room. Running back room, you lost a lot of production from here. In the running back room, well, I'll tell you who's found new homes. Jaron Mangum has found new home in Minnesota. Jalen Berger, at least as of recording and to my knowledge, is still looking for a new home, while Davion Prim and Jordan Simmons have found new homes as well. Simmons, that going over to Akron. What did those guys do last year? Well, no one besides Nathan Carter, who does return to this team, had over 100 yards rushing last year. Now, Mangum and Berger have been pretty good at points throughout their career, while Prim and Simmons were depth guys for the Spartans last season. But Berger and Mangum being gone, I think, are notable losses. Even though they didn't have that much production last year, they are some pretty high upside guys. Nathan Carter's a high upside guy. How high upside? Well, he led the team in rushing last year. 798 yards, 4 touchdowns on 185 carries. You also do get a transfer coming in, even with all you lose. Karen Lynch Adams comes over from UMass. Now, I know it's a UMass transfer, and a lot of people are going to point and laugh because, well, it's UMass. No hate to any of my Minutemen fans out there. But Karen Lynch Adams is a very talented running back, a very good player who will provide big carry minutes for Michigan State in 2024. A couple freshmen in Brandon Tulis and Mekhi Frazier get in the program as well. could have some big carries this upcoming year. Trey Mosley out of the wide receiver room has gone to the NFL. 288 yards, 2 catches on 28 carries last year. Was only the third leading receiver, but you could argue the most talented player in that wide receiver room. He is gone, while you lose Christian Fitzpatrick, who had over 250 yards receiving last year, and Tyrell Henry, who was just on the precipice of 200 yards last year, did have 3 receiving touchdowns. They have both found new homes through the transfer portal. You do get Montori Foster, who was your leading receiver, coming back. Jaron Glover, Alante Brown, and Antonio Gates Jr. come back here as well. You also do get Nick Marsh, who's a high-profile freshman coming in, could play some big minutes, and Tyneil Hopper and Brennan Parachek come back in the tight end room with Jack Velling. That should be a second L, not an I. Let me fix that. I think I made the same mistake in my Oregon State video as well, so I apologize for that, but Jack Velling is in this program from Oregon State. Oh, my apologies. I didn't talk about what they lost out of the tight end room. Well, let's talk about that now. Jalen Franklin is gone due to graduation. Malik Carr, who was the second leading receiver last year, is gone, as well as Evan Morris, who didn't really play that much out of the tight end position, but again, did have 4 catches, so that's production loss nonetheless. Just a guy that got lost in this tight end room. Again, we'll recap what they have coming back and coming in. Tyneil Hopper, Brennan Parachek, and Jack Velling from the portal make up this Michigan State tight end room in 2024. You take a look at your offensive line, and Nick Samak, I believe, was that center last year. He is gone. Gino Vandemark, Keyshawn Blackstock. Had to fix that name as well. My apologies. Spencer Brown, Ethan Boyd, and Kevin Wigginton II have all entered the portal, while J.D. Duplain has since graduated. Ooh, that's a ton of talent in the offensive line room being gone. You do, however, return Brandon Baldwin, Christina Phillips, Ashton Lepo, and Dallas Fincher. I also do believe that's supposed to be Christian. I read it as Christina. What is it with me and the typos today? Christina Phillips. I know I'm going to get dogged on that in the comment section below. It's all right. It happens. Dallas Fincher, I believe I already said his name, is coming back. While you take a look at the transfer portal and who you get in, Luke Newman, Tanner Miller, and Andrew Dennis all enter this program. So overall, when you talk about this team here in 2024, quarterback room should take a step up in Aiden Childs. Yes, you lose a lot of depth in the running back room, but Carter is still a very good back. Karen Lynch-Adams, I think, will be very good. You got some real good talent in this wide receiver room as well. Overall, though, this offense just has to take a step up in play. It starts with that quarterback room. Can Aiden Childs be special? And if not him, maybe Tommy Schuster. Again, if there's going to be a quarterback that's going to be special in this room, I think it's going to end up being Childs. But if not him, can Tommy Schuster impress? What is the skill position room going to look like? Can you get a guy that maybe has 800 yards receiving as your leading receiver this season? A lot's going to have to improve in this offense. Also, the offensive line, 25 sacks last year is not great, and the run blocking could be a little bit better as well. And they lost a ton of talent through the portal. A lot of question marks, but a lot of hope on this Michigan State offensive side. Now, the defense for Michigan State had its ups and had its downs last season, but overall was a very, very talented group, and it does lose a lot of that talent. While that talent didn't necessarily show on the stat sheet, this was a defense that has a lot of very good talented players on it. It was shown in their third down conversion percentage defense, in which they actually weren't that terrible, but defensive line especially is where this team got hit hard by the transfer portal. Derek Harmon, Simeon Barrow, Zion Young, and Bai Joby, all of which varying amounts of production for this Michigan State team last season. But, I mean, you take a look at two guys that were really good on the defensive line, were Harmon and Barrow. 40 tackles for Harmon, 36 for Barrow, a sack and a half for Harmon, 3.5 sacks for Barrow. You also look at Zion Young, who is right behind the two of them, 26 tackles and a sack and a half for him last season as well. Bai Joby was more of a depth piece, but a notable loss to me nonetheless. You also do lose Brandon Wright, who has since graduated, 19 tackles, 2 sacks for him last season. Again, very talented players leaving this defensive line. So let's look at what you have coming back. Maverick Hansen, Jalen Thompson, and Chris Bogle. Okay, some solid pieces coming back on the defensive line, but you lost a ton through the portal, and Jonathan Smith knew they had to supplement. So what do? Well, they dive on into the transfer portal, of course. Quindarius Dunnigan, he enters this room. He is coming over from Middle Tennessee. You also do get Daquan Dowse coming over from Georgia Tech. Ben Roberts is coming into this program as well. Jalen Satchel is into this program. Ruquan Buckley from Nebraska. Anthony Jones is an edge rusher that comes over from the Indiana Hoosiers, as well as I believe one or two other guys that I may have forgot to mention there. But a lot of talent leaving this defensive line room. You're able to supplement that with a ton of transfers. It's a matter of how they gel and how they fit in this system that'll determine how good the defensive line is in 2024. Aaron Brule and Jacoby Windman were two of the better, not only linebackers, but defensive players, period, for this Michigan State team last season. Aaron Brule had 64 tackles, led the team with 5 sacks, 2 pass defended for him last season. And then you take a look at a guy like Jacoby Windman, who, yes, didn't have as much production last year, but it still is a very talented player who had 15 tackles last season. Both of those guys, again, going to be playing on Sundays. Cal Halliday does come back in the linebacker room. However, your leading tackler last year, 91 tackles, a sack, did pick a pass off as well. Jordan Hall and Darius Snow also are going to be returning. Hall, another top 5 tackler on this team, 4.5 sacks to go along with that as well. And again, more transfers come in here to this room. Jordan Turner and Wayne Matthews both enter. Turner coming over from Wisconsin, Wayne Matthews coming over from Old Dominion, and you get a transfer from the rival in the Michigan Wolverines in Samaj Bridgman, as well as Marcellus Pulliam over from Miami. So again, the amount of transfers coming in, pretty good amount. Again, Turner and Matthews probably will play the most minutes in the linebacker room among transfers. Chester Kimbrough has run out of eligibility in the cornerback room. He has graduated, and Marquis Lowry has entered the transfer portal. Depth piece for a depth piece was Lowry last season, but Kimbrough, 25 tackles, 3 pass defended, really solid player. And Jaden Mangum in the safety room, he leaves through the transfer portal. Led the team with 4 interceptions last year, tack on 3 pass defended, and 53 tackles. Pretty good player for Michigan State's defense in 2023. In 2024, though, here's what your roster looks like. Chance Rucker and Charles Brantley come back in the cornerback room with Ed Woods and Legend Cavazos. I probably butchered that name, so I apologize. A former Ohio State transfer that now comes over most recently from the North Carolina Tar Heels. And Ed Woods is coming over here from Arizona State, 3-star rated transfer. Malik Spencer, Angelo Gross, who's a very talented player, Dylan Tatum, Amorian Smith, and Khalil Majid all return to this safety room. And while there are no notable safety transfers, there are a couple other transfers that I forgot to mention that could have some big impact either in the cornerback room or if they decide to convert him to safety as well. Kickers are people too, and you returned both from last year. Jonathan Kim returns as the primary kicker, and Ryan Eckley returns as the primary punter. So when you take a look overall at this Michigan State defense, yes, it lost a ton of talent. They were able to supplement pretty well through the transfer portal. But this is a Michigan State defense that still has their questions. How well did the transfers gel is question 1. Okay, now second that, how much can they improve from last season? The upside in the talent was great, but it didn't show last season. Can it show in 2024? That's what Jonathan Smith is going to hope to get out of this team. As now we dive on in to the Spartan football schedule. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I have the Spartans being able to win easily, while any game in yellow will be a close competitive fight, but the Spartans will be able to win that one with the loss, or I should say, any game that I have Michigan State losing will be in red. So without any further ado, let's dive on in to talking about the Michigan State Spartan football schedule in 2024. And I think it's going to start out with the win against the Florida Atlantic Owls. Florida Atlantic was a fairly decent team in the American Athletic ranks last season, their first season in that conference, and they should be a pretty good unit in 2024. As Tom Herman knows how to have success with Group of 5 programs, he's a pretty solid head coach. He will definitely have his fair share of talent. However, you lose Casey Thompson after an ACL injury last season. You lose some other talent through the transfer portal, and I just don't think they have enough talent to compete with Michigan State. Sure, they can put up a pretty decent fight, but I think the Spartans pull away and do win that game. The next team up on the schedule for the Michigan State Spartans are the Maryland Terrapins, and well, Maryland has got a lot of question marks entering this year as well. The defense has always had question marks since they get, or I should say, once they get through the month of September, that defense really starts to collapse. And although there is a lot of returning talent, again, the question marks on defense still remains. And now they even have question marks offensively because you do lose Talia Tungavailoa. You lose a lot of talented weapons out of that wide receiver room that are going to be gone off this team as well. Billy Edwards should play quarterback. You get Roman Hemby back at running back. There still are some solid wide receiver pieces there. The defense does, again, as I said, have a lot of returning talent. And again, I said they get questions once they get past September. Well, this game is in September, ladies and gentlemen. I think this will be a win for the Maryland Terrapins. They play really well at the beginning of the year, struggle as they get into conference play. Now, while this is an early conference game for both of these teams, again, Michigan State with the transfers, I think need a little bit more time to gel than Maryland does, especially with all the returners they have on defense. And while the questions still may remain there, I do think that Michigan State will pick up that loss and move to 1-1 on the season. Should be able to get the win against Prairie View A&M, though, in week 3. That's an FCS level team before you play the Boston College Golden Eagles. Now, Boston College, going to be a sneaky team under Bill O'Brien in 2024. You get Thomas Castellanos coming back to play quarterback. Kai Robichai is back to be that running back, while Trayshawn Ward comes in as a running back transfer. We know how talented of an upside player he can be, former Florida State and I believe Kansas State transfer there as well. Some pretty solid pieces transferring defensively, especially in that secondary, and I think they give Michigan State problems here as well, and I think they're going to be able to win that game. Boston College, the team, again, under Bill O'Brien, that I think can be pretty decent this year, and as Michigan State still starts to get some things figured out here, I think that road game against Boston College, they trip up and they go 2-2 throughout their first 4 weeks, and then it is just an absolutely brutal stretch of games here. These next 4 games are just wicked, and I think they lose all 4 of them, and I'll explain why. This 2-game stretch here between Ohio State and, or I should say with Ohio State, and then on the road Friday night in Autzen Stadium against the Oregon Ducks. Both of these teams are going to be 2 of the best teams in the country this year. They will lose to Ohio State, even though it's at home, with Caleb Downs entering. That might be the most talented defensive team in the entire country, especially with all the NFL caliber guys they have coming back, like JTT, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke. They get Will Howard to replace Kyle McCord at quarterback. Quinshon Judkins comes in. The wide receiver room is still loaded, and the Buckeyes are going to be very talented this year. And then Oregon, look, it's going to be a Friday night in Autzen Stadium. What more do you want from me? That place is going to be rocking. It's going to be loud. And Dan Lanning also was one of the nation's most talented teams, with Dylan Gabriel coming over to play quarterback. They've loaded up on defensive transfers. Again, Oregon will be really good in 2024. They will not be slowed down by the Michigan State Spartans. Then you get your first bye week of the year, and it comes again after that brutal 2-game stretch with a winnable game coming up here against the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think this one is winnable for the Michigan State Spartans. Now, again, I said they lose all 4, so obviously that spoils my prediction. I do think that they lose this game, but not without a fight. The big question for Iowa is how much is new offensive coordinator Tim Lester going to improve the offensive side of the football? If Cade McNamara can stay healthy, there are some solid wide receivers. There are some pretty solid running backs there as well, and we know the defense is going to be elite. Well, that's what's going to win Iowa this game here. Their elite level defense is just going to be too much for Michigan State to handle, and I think the Hawkeyes win that one in Spartan Stadium in week 8. And then it's the rivalry game against the reigning national champion Michigan Wolverines, and I think Michigan State loses this one as well. Yes, Michigan lost a ton of talent from last season. J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, a ton of talent in that secondary, some really good players on the defensive line as well, even some other really good offensive players that I didn't mention, but a lot of talent still comes back. And even though I'm not in love with that quarterback room, Donovan Edwards is back, a lot of pieces on defense are back, Michigan will still be one of the nation's better sides in 2024. So 5 straight losses for Michigan State. They would have to win every single game from this point out to make a bowl game. Well, after they go through that brutal stretch, the schedule gets more manageable, and I think the win streak ends at 5, or I think the losing streak ends at 5. A win streak starts because I do have them beating the Indiana Hoosiers at home. Indiana is going to be an interesting team to watch this year, as Curt Cignetti is entering his first year with the Hoosiers program. And Indiana is going to be one of those teams of, okay, are they going to be that great? Are they not? How does Curt Cignetti figure out things in the Big Ten in his first year? They got some talented transfers coming in, but I think it's going to take Curt Cignetti some time. So that's a win for me for the against the Indiana Hoosiers, I should say. And then you get your second bye week, but you have to go on the road to play the Illinois Fighting Illini. And I do like Brett Bielema's squad this season. A lot of returning talent on that team. You get Luke Altmaier back at quarterback, who I think is going to take a step up from last year. And I know there were a couple games last season where Luke Altmaier just looked horrendous. There are a couple NFL caliber wide receivers leaving, but the defense still has a lot of very good pieces, and the Brett Bielema system is still there. I think the Illini improve in 2024, and I think it comes with a win and the expense of Michigan State's bowl hopes, and that is going to be a loss for the Michigan State Spartans, but good news for them. Depending on how good of news it is to you watching this out there, I do think they win their next two. While Ryan Walters and the Purdue Boilermakers are going to be better in 2024, I still don't see them still being that great. While there still is some solid talent there, I think Michigan State's going to be able to win that game against Purdue, especially since it's at home. And then the Rutgers Scarlet Knights are a team that I am very high on and are very, very talented entering 2024. I think that's a team that's going to be really good, and we've seen the Greg Schiano system work before. Ethan Kaliakmanis comes in at quarterback, a lot of good defensive pieces, but I think Michigan State going to look to close the season off strong with this one being at home. I think they do get that win, which leads them at 5-7. My apologies, I didn't have the record range on there. Well, there it is right now. Still a fairly good year for Michigan State, but again, it took time for Jonathan Smith to figure it out at Oregon State. I think it'll take him some time to figure things out here, as there are a lot of culture things that need to fix with Michigan State, but the roster construction is there, and I think they'll be a pretty solid team in 2024. I got them barely missing the bowl game. I want to know what you guys think, though, in the comment section below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder, and we'll talk about the Cal Golden Bears in the next video. Goodbye.